New digital scan of the Titanic has offered an unprecedented insight into the ship's final moments. A detailed three-dimensional reconstruction of the wreck reveals engineers worked to keep the lights on even as the vessel sank.
Imagine diving almost 4 kilometers beneath the surface of the Atlantic, into pitch-black waters so cold they could freeze your bones. Now imagine what they found resting there. Twisted metal, shattered dreams, and something that changes everything we thought we knew about the Titanic.
While the recovery of artifacts on the Titanic site today is controversial and famous, perhaps some of the most moving pieces were recovered from the bodies in 1912. Various trawlers were sent out to recover the dead by White Star Line in various stages immediately after the sinking.
This is not just another story about a shipwreck. This is about secrets hidden for over a century, sitting quietly at 3,800 meters below the ocean's surface, waiting to rewrite history. Let's take it back to where it all began.
Titanic was considered completely unsinkable. I mean, this was the safest place you could be on the ocean, was on the Titanic, apparently.
The unsinkable ship. The RMS Titanic wasn't just a ship, it was a floating palace, or in other words, a true engineering marvel of its time. Built by Harland and Wolff in Belfast, this behemoth stretched 882 feet long and stood over 175 feet tall, towering like a skyscraper laid on its side. At the time, it was the largest moving object humans had ever created. Just think about that for a second. The largest moving object ever created. Being aboard it must have been a once-in-a-lifetime experience, literally. But yeah, the Titanic wasn't just big, it was beautiful. Its interiors were modeled after luxury hotels and opulent mansions. First-class passengers dined on fine china and danced under glittering crystal chandeliers. The ship even had a gymnasium, a squash court, Turkish baths, and its own onboard newspaper printed daily. So pretty much a floating 5-star hotel. And to top it all, the mighty ship was marketed as the unsinkable ship. It seems very ironic now, but imagine the aura back then. The claim was backed by its advanced safety features and watertight compartments. But that word, unsinkable, like I said before, would soon become a cruel irony burned into history. The tragedy struck. On April 10th, 1912, the Titanic set sail from Southampton, England, bound for New York City. On board were over 2,200 people, an eclectic mix of the world's richest elite, hopeful immigrants chasing the American dream, and everyone in between. The first-class passengers were the definition of wealth and privilege. John Jacob Astor IV, one of the richest men on Earth, was on board. So was fashion designer Lady Duff Gordon, lounging in luxury few could even imagine. Meanwhile, down in steerage, hundreds of immigrants huddled together, carrying everything they owned in small bags and crates. To them, the Titanic wasn't a luxury cruise, it was a lifeline to a better future. But that dream turned into a nightmare just 4 days later. On the night of April 14th, 1912, at exactly 11:40 p.m., the Titanic struck an iceberg in the frigid North Atlantic. The surprising thing was that most people on board barely felt the jolt. What they didn't realize was that the ship's hull had been gashed open below the waterline, sealing its fate, and they were obliviously unprepared. The Titanic carried only 20 lifeboats, enough for barely half the people on board. Even worse, some of those boats were launched half-empty due to panic, confusion, and poor organization. By 2:20 a.m., the unsinkable Titanic was gone, swallowed whole by the icy Black Sea. Over 1,500 men, women, and children perished in the freezing Atlantic, making it one of the deadliest maritime disasters in peacetime history. For over 70 years, that wreck sat hidden, lost, forgotten, and probably left alone because of all the horrors on board, until explorers finally found it and changed everything we knew. The exploration. Fast forward to recent years. As technology advanced, explorers, historians, and marine scientists returned to the Titanic's resting place deep in the North Atlantic. But this time, they weren't just diving to look, they were scanning, documenting, and recreating every inch of the wreck like never before. Submersibles, robotic drones, and cutting-edge 3D mapping changed the game entirely. And that's when Titanic's story took a turn nobody expected. In 2023, a groundbreaking expedition used the latest in deep-sea scanning to produce something truly extraordinary, a full-sized 3D digital scan of the entire wreck site. This wasn't just a few blurry photos or sonar readings. This was a complete reconstruction of the Titanic in terrifying, beautiful detail. The project was led by Magellan Limited and Atlantic Productions. It took over 200 hours of scanning and capturing more than 700,000 high-resolution images. All of that data was combined into a three-dimensional model of the Titanic with millimeter precision. For the first time in history, researchers could see the entire wreck site as if the ocean itself had been drained. And here's where things get wild. The new scans revealed that Titanic's breakup was far more violent than experts had assumed for decades. Most people are familiar with the famous story of the ship breaking in two on the surface before sinking beneath the waves. We've seen it dramatized in movies and documentaries, with the Titanic gracefully breaking apart before slipping into the deep. But reality was much more brutal. The scans revealed that Titanic's stern was not just broken, it was shredded. The massive steel hull looked like an empty soda can that had been violently crushed and twisted as it spiraled downward. Pieces of the ship were scattered over a debris field stretching several kilometers across the ocean floor. The remains. Even more haunting were the personal belongings found strewn around the wreck. Shoes, leather suitcases, perfectly preserved by the cold, unopened champagne bottles, jewelry, dishes, and even fragments of the ship's famous grand staircase. But the biggest shock? Researchers uncovered hidden sections of the hull buried under layers of silt. Some of these parts showed terrifying evidence of explosive decompression. The Titanic wasn't just sinking. The crushing pressure of the deep ocean, piece by piece, was ripping it apart. As one expert put it, it didn't just break in half, it was shredded on the way down. Everything we thought we knew about Titanic's final moments? Completely rewritten. But the discoveries didn't stop with the wreckage itself. Those high-definition scans revealed not only the violent destruction of the ship, but also haunting new details about the human tragedy that unfolded that night. Among the wreckage were pairs of shoes, scattered all across the debris field, many still side by side, untouched by time. It wasn't a coincidence. In the cold, acidic waters of the Atlantic, human remains dissolve, but leather survives. These shoes mark the exact spots where victims fell, curled up or side by side, waiting for a rescue that never came. One particularly haunting discovery was a single baby's leather shoe, alone, small, almost perfectly preserved in the silt. It was a reminder that the sinking of the Titanic wasn't just a maritime accident. It was a catastrophe filled with personal, painful stories. Behind every artifact lies a life, a family, a future, that never happened. And there's more. For decades, many believed that when the Titanic sank, most of the passengers in the water floated to the surface while the ship disappeared beneath them. But these new scans and forensic studies tell a different, far darker story. There's now strong evidence that many of Titanic's victims were actually dragged down with the sinking stern section. The force of that massive structure plunging into the depths created enormous suction. Passengers and crew, unlucky enough to be near that part of the ship, didn't stand a chance. They were pulled into a metallic vortex, disappearing with the twisting wreckage. It wasn't just drowning. It wasn't just freezing to death. For many, it was a brutal, violent end, as thousands of tons of iron twisted, snapped, and crushed around them. Imagine the chaos. The ship, nearly vertical, people clinging to railings, screaming, slipping into the black water, only to be dragged downward by an invisible hand of physics, never to be seen again. As experts pieced together this new evidence, one thing became painfully clear. The Titanic wasn't just a sinking ship. It was a floating city transformed into a metallic meat grinder in its final, horrifying minutes. The calm surface above gave no hint of the horror unfolding in the icy depths below. It's no wonder the Titanic's story still grips the world over a century later. Now here's where it gets controversial: the mystery. Despite those detailed scans, some parts of the Titanic are still missing, and nobody can fully explain why. One major piece? The keel. That's the spine of the entire ship, the backbone that runs from bow to stern, holding it all together. It was gone, completely missing. Some experts believe it may have buried itself deep under layers of mud and silt during the ship's final plunge, almost like the Earth itself tried to swallow it whole. Others think violent forces may have scattered pieces of it miles away. But there's another theory, and this one might just blow your mind. Some believe that certain parts of the Titanic were salvaged secretly decades ago. Not during Ballard's famous 1985 expedition, but long before that, salvaged by private operations, hidden from public view, and sold on the black market to private collectors. Think about it. Rare pieces of one of the most famous ships in history, sitting in secret collections, displayed only for the rich elite. Now, I'm not saying there's hard proof, but there have been enough whispers in maritime circles, enough anonymous claims to keep the theory alive. Could priceless parts of the Titanic be sitting in someone's private collection right now? Could pieces of the grand staircase or sections of ornate railings be locked in vaults, away from historians and the public? We may never know. But the mystery surrounding the Titanic's wreck is only part of the story. Billionaires, explorers, adventurers, they all want a piece of the Titanic in one way or another. In recent years, a disturbing trend has emerged. Wealthy thrill seekers paying millions of dollars to descend to the Titanic's watery grave. Some say it's for adventure, others say it's for bragging rights. Either way, the result is the same, turning one of history's greatest tragedies into a playground for the ultra-wealthy. The Titan submersible. Remember the Titan submersible tragedy in 2023. The Titan was an experimental sub built by OceanGate, designed to take paying tourists down to see the Titanic firsthand. But on one of its trips, it imploded, instantly killing everyone on board, including billionaires and thrill seekers who wanted to touch history. It was a brutal, horrifying reminder that the Titanic is not a tourist attraction. It's a mass grave. And yet, the obsession continues. Some companies are still planning future trips to the Titanic. Some entrepreneurs are talking about raising entire sections of the wreck for display in museums. Others want to recover more artifacts, some for preservation, some for profit, and some purely for the thrill of it. It's greed wrapped in curiosity, ambition tangled with disrespect. Every dive risks disturbing the peace of over 1,500 souls who never made it home. But let's zoom out for a second. Why does this discovery at 3,800 meters down matter? Why should anyone care about rusty iron, decaying cabins, and shattered decks? It matters because this isn't just about a ship. It's about a turning point in human history. It's about the dangers of unchecked ambition, arrogance, and blind faith in technology. The Titanic was supposed to represent progress, modernity, and luxury. It was humanity flexing its muscles, saying, "Look how powerful we are. We've conquered the oceans." Instead, it became the ultimate symbol of what happens when pride outruns preparation. And an example as well that the oceans can never be conquered. It's not just about learning the facts of what happened that night, it's about learning the lesson. Nature doesn't care how rich you are. The ocean doesn't respect class. Icebergs don't check passenger lists. And yet, we keep going back. Even now, in 2025, companies are planning new ways to get people down there. Millionaires and billionaires are still lining up, writing massive checks, desperate for a glimpse of the wreck with their own eyes. They want to say they were there, like being at the Titanic's grave makes them part of the legend. And the cycle continues, history repeating itself like a bad echo. But there's hope too. Thanks to that historic 3D scanning project by Magellan Limited, in 2023, the Titanic is now being digitally preserved forever. That scan is like a full-scale 3D map of the entire site. Every twisted beam, every splintered floorboard, every lost piece of furniture. Even when the rusticals finish consuming what's left of the physical ship, its digital twin will remain. They've even started talking about creating full-blown virtual reality tours. Imagine slipping on a VR headset and walking up Titanic's grand staircase. Standing on the bow, exploring cabins frozen in time. You'll be able to explore the wreck without disturbing it, without risking lives, without greed or disrespect. It's the future of underwater archaeology, and Titanic is leading the way. But there's another problem lurking beneath all of this, the legal nightmare. Who owns the Titanic? Technically, the wreck belongs to no one. It's in international waters, outside the jurisdiction of any single country. But that hasn't stopped museums, private companies, and even governments from fighting over who has the right to recover artifacts or control access to the site. There are ongoing legal battles trying to get the Titanic declared an international maritime grave, a protected site that would permanently block scavenging, commercial dives, or artifact sales. But until that happens, the race continues. People will keep diving, keep searching, keep uncovering Titanic's secrets. And with every discovery, every hidden cabin exposed, every artifact recovered, more questions rise to the surface. What else is down there, buried beneath layers of cold Atlantic mud? What untold personal stories sank with her? Could there still be sealed compartments, secret rooms, or priceless belongings trapped deep beneath the debris field? Will we ever know everything that happened that night? Or will Titanic keep some of her secrets forever? One thing's for sure, the story of the Titanic isn't finished. And that discovery at 3,800 meters, it didn't just give us closure, it opened up new mysteries, new controversies, and new debates. The Titanic's ghost still lingers beneath the waves, whispering stories no one's fully heard yet. And as long as we keep searching, the Atlantic might just whisper back. So what do you think they'll find next? Hidden rooms, lost treasures, secret journals, or undiscovered artifacts? Let me know in the comments below. This story is just getting started. And if you love uncovering history's greatest mysteries, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more interesting videos in the future. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.